up that line.
But that still leaves somebody.
Have you ever looked at that one? I have. It was gift houses.
And I don't know what so I want to take a look at the fundraising sheet and see, take one more look. I did update it on there. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna get started, guys, because it is 6:35, and we try to keep it to an hour. We don't. Alan is out of town still right now, and he's a treasurer, so we don't have a treasurer's report right now. I have no idea what that situation is like, but he's back next month, so we'll get an update on that. Let's see, anything else like related to like?
If you brought school supplies for kids, go ahead and leave them by the sign-in sheet. We'll collect them up and take a look to loop it up later this week.
Yeah, we collected a bunch of stuff already, which was great at the little bubble thing. We gathered some stuff, so Loop It Up's a great organization. So a couple of other things too. We have a whole bunch of flyers about hurricane preparedness out there. So we're getting close, we're getting into that season, so pick those up. And then we also got these art maps that were just released from Arc Savannah, which is it's a map of all of the local galleries in Savannah and the surrounding area. Very cool, actually. It has everything. There's a really thriving art scene here, so feel free to grab one of those as well and check that out. One other thing too is we're going to be doing a little gathering for National Night Out, which we think is next Tuesday, August 7th.
August 7th, 6:30.
6:30.
At Brinkman DeLorme. It's the kind of annual picnic potluck, so bring a dish of chairs, blankets, chairs. It's always a fun time.
Low key. We'll have extra bubbles too, which we have on the.
For those of you that did not show up to the bubble party, you missed out.
Yeah, I know, bubbles were fun.
Bubbles were fun.
What time? 6:30?
6:30, yeah. Did everybody get one of these police reports things here? Sharif had to run off for a pretty significant crime issue, so he won't be doing his report tonight. So I just encourage you to kind of take a look at this. If you have any questions, we can get those to Sharif, or he's obviously open to us contacting him directly as well, so we can take a look at that. So we've got Mr. Llyod here. Thank you for being here tonight.
No, thank you for inviting me, Rob.
Yeah, really appreciate you being here, and Julian, thank you for setting that up. And we're going to get to him real quick, but we always like to get the guys from the fire department, so I don't have to sit around and wait. They got a lot of stuff. So what do you got for us tonight?
Well, thank you. As Ellie knows, since you mentioned the SEMA flyers, it's actually what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, the fire fee has been kind of squashed, and that controversy is behind us. I just wanted to remind everybody that the hot topic now is hurricane season. So it does run from June through November, and so the pamphlets back there, I haven't looked at those, but what I was going to offer you was the phone number to SEMA and the ChathamEmergency.org website. We encourage everybody to plan ahead, prepare. It's got a wealth of information. The City of Savannah website has links to it as well. If you know somebody that doesn't have access to a computer or anything like that, I can leave you the phone number, or if you need to, you can even stop by the firehouse. We'll sit down, we can navigate the website for you, help get you the information that you need, and help you with whatever you need. And of course, as always, I want to beat this horse to death. Smoke detectors, we do provide free smoke detectors, so once again, I can't stress this enough. If you do not have a working smoke detector in your home, please give us a call. We'll come replace it. We'll provide you one. We'll inspect it, change out the batteries, whatever's needed or necessary. If you know somebody in the neighborhood, a family member, a loved one, or friend, you know that they don't have one or they need some assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll take care of that. Any questions?
Well, thanks, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate all your work.
Not a question, but in the last, more of a statement, in the last hurricane, I utilized, or the last bunk out, or whatever it was, I utilized the SEMA Twitter feed, which gets updated probably faster than the Facebook or website, and it basically showed an ongoing, this is closed, this is closed, this is open, come back, don't, whatever it is. So if you are on Twitter, just a FYI.
That is important to note that city policy for emergency responders is that once the storms start rolling in, once the wind speed picks up past 35 miles per hour, we no longer respond. So it really is incumbent upon you to plan ahead and to pay attention to those notifications, because once the storm starts to pick up, if anything should happen, unfortunately, we are not capable of coming to get you or helping you out or doing anything. And that also goes if you evacuate, please make sure you pay attention to those updates when it's safe to come back in. So.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Captain,
you, appreciate
appreciate it. I'm just gonna real quick knock out Gary here from code compliance, because I don't wanna make you sit here through our discussion about 49th Street, so.
You're gonna miss out, Gary. Gary, you should stay.
Oh, look,
You
you
should
want
stay.
to stick around.
You should stay. Yeah, you're fine.
Are you sure?
No, Gary, go ahead, go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
go ahead. You can decide.
No, go ahead.
I'm Thompson Brunswick.
You're fine.
A month ago when I was here, I was a trainee. I'm no longer a trainee. I passed my ICC test, and so and I've been assigned to your area. So
Welcome.
I'm here. Last month, people were asking about bulk collections for sanitation, and they are collected weekly now. If you have a love seat, if you have appliances, you can put them right in the same place you put your main trash can, and they will collect them the same day. Just as long as it takes them like 5 minutes or under to throw them away. It is free. That week I'll have to do a special request. And that's really it. Just everyone, if you can keep your lawns mowed. I know lots of rain, so they grow really quickly. And so try to keep your carts once the garbage is taken out, when you're back in. That's really it. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you so much, Gary. Appreciate you, what you do for us. Great, so the floor is yours. Did you want to say something here?
No, again, Rob, I do appreciate you guys inviting me out. Obviously today, or tonight, this evening, we're going to talk about 49th Street, get some feedback. I think for me, I'm going to try not to say too much, because this is really where I give you some idea of where we are with the project. And then what I really want to do is hear from you guys. So that's kind of how I want to do this conversation. Again, Alderman Miller will attest, we've had several conversations of this large-scale project. So I'll ask, how many people, everybody in here live on 49th Street? So everybody's familiar with what we're doing, or do I need to bring some other folks up to speed? Okay. All right. Well, no, I know it's been a very long project, but I'll say this, the reason that I asked was everybody familiar, because it's a unique project, Gretchen. Because what happens is we are doing something that's a little bit different, where we are actually restoring a historic road. And this is where I go too far. Robin will correct me if I say something wrong. But what we're endeavoring to do is restore historic roads. So typically what we would have done is come in and just pave it. So this is a very unique project. It has had its challenges, I'll admit to that. It has been a very long project, I will admit to that, but it is still a very unique project. Now, with that being said, where are we? Well, we are in what I consider the final stages of it. There's two large, or fairly large outstanding items that we are addressing. The first one I want to be very candid about is a mistake that I made in terms of when we were removing some of the asphalt, and there's a lot of you guys in this room that met me out there. We scraped the asphalt. We were a little aggressive, and so I made a mistake. No doubt about it. I'm guilty. It's mine. I'll own it. And we are now coming back to fix that mistake. So what we have hired a company. I think it's Southeastern Grinding. Is that Richard? They are coming to kind of smooth some areas out. So that's one phase that we're working on. And again, it's important for me that you guys hear me say that was originally not part of the project. What happened was I made a mistake. But I think it was Robin Gretchen, or maybe it was Robin or Stuart. I don't remember who was the group, but or Mr. Barlin, Joel, I think his name. I admitted to the mistake, and I made a commitment there to fix that mistake. And so that's what this part of it is that we're doing now. The last part that I'm aware of that we committed to was to fill in some of the larger cracks. So that's kind of where I'm going to 49th Street. But this is an opportunity for me to hear directly from other folks that did not meet out with me in the street when we had some of the challenges. But it would be remiss of me, before I sit down, not to say just two things. Number one, restate that how unique this is. But number two, to understand that for me, as a public servant, this is a public asset. I treat them the same, right? You guys, there's 49th Street, there's 50th Street. I have 700 miles of streets. I'll let the alderman, when he speaks about the challenges that I have with the infrastructure. But for me, this is a public asset. I'm a public servant. The decisions that I make are generally for the public benefit. So I'll take any questions, but I just want you guys to understand the context of my answers. It's going to be from a public servant, which I am. I work for you guys and for the other 8 aldermen. But I'm really trying to manage a public asset, generally for the public benefit. So you won't get a lot of me for one district, one street, one neighborhood. I have 700 miles, and my goal is to improve the infrastructure for the entire city of Savannah, fundamentally. So with that being said, that's where we are on 49th Street, and so let's have a discussion. But I'm not going to stand up the entire time. I'm actually going to sit down. Okay. All right. So with that being said, who wants to start? Here you go. Tell me your name,
I
please.
live on 49th Cedar.
Okay.
And I watched them do the grinding today, and I stepped and walked on it, and it's comfortable even in bare feet. It was doing such a nice job with cracks and stuff. I will bring up the fact that the city did a wonderful job putting speed brakes in 52nd.
Okay.
Wonderful. All they've done is made the speedway 49th. 3 people almost got killed the other afternoon when we were trying to slow some guy down in a Mercedes, and he was doing 70 miles an hour. We'd like to see stop signs. People even talked about the convenience of the centerpiece in some of them, or speed brakes. I don't know what the answer is. I'm speaking for all the people that I know down on my part of 49th. And it's once you get, it's wider than the other streets. It's wider than 50th and 48th, the dead end. So what's happened is they're coming off 52nd and 49th is now the speedway.
Well, and let me speak to that, Mr. Barlow. So when we have our traffic calming initiatives, we generally try to take an entire community, because you're absolutely right. If you put in, my words are speed tables, then you shift traffic, and they go to traffic is just like they take the path of least resistance. So what I would say the answer to that is to, once we're finished, there is a process, and I don't remember the website off the top of my head, that you can go to the website and get the information and submit a request for traffic calming.
Can I jump in on that? Because that's a whole different thing. Traffic calming had died here for like 6 or 8 years. They did absolutely nothing. And in 2016, we started looking at it and find out that not everybody in the neighborhood has the same idea of traffic calming. You would like to see some traffic calming devices. I think I saw some hands over here that aren't necessarily in favor of that. And that's what we ran into. It's when I got elected in Olin Heights, which is the area on the other side of like 55th Street. They had put in 21 temporary devices, and it installed there because we couldn't get a response from the public, and the city kept sending people out to try to get a response from the public, couldn't get it. And we finally got a response, and we finally got approval of 3 of the 21. So they've now put in a system for traffic calming, and you can go to the city website, savannahga.gov, and there's a search bar, and just type in traffic calming. First thing that pops up is your application. The important part is that we need the neighborhood to get together and decide what they want. And get all together, because it's not going to do any good if some people want traffic calming, other people don't. Some people want speed tables, some people want roundabouts, some people don't want anything, some people don't like the signage that goes along with it, kind of jumps up the neighborhood. People don't like the cars accelerating, decelerating, taking off, it keeps you up all night. So there are issues in there, but the neighborhood has got to get together. And you can, and that's what happened on 52nd Street. But we're going to have to leave that to the neighbors to help us understand what you want, because the city spent a lot of money putting in the devices and then having to take them back out when people didn't like them afterwards.
May I just interject really quick? I have something I'd like to talk about traffic calming as well, but maybe we could let's just focus on the street, 49th Street, and then let's come back to traffic calming after we finish the discussion on 49th Street
Good idea.
and that situation, because I don't wanna lose focus from
Got it.
what Heath is here for, and that's a really major issue, and we were the victim of a hit and run for our parked car on 50th Street, which is, we think is related to that same issue you have. So I'd like to talk about that, but why don't we finish
Okay.
the 49th Street conversation, and then we'll come back to that.
Is the 49th Street project going to expand onto other streets, and if so, when?
What was your name? I'm sorry.
My name's Brooke.
Brooke.
Mhm.
So that is the question, that is the fundamental question. I don't have an answer to that yet. And the reason is this, again, I spoke that this was very different. Typically, we do not do this. My task now is to go back and to evaluate how effective what we did in terms of restoring a concrete street, and is that the best approach?
Was everybody notified on 49th that this is like a sample project type of thing, or a test, or, yeah?
I don't know that they
Not
were
really.
notified. I think everybody was a
Because
part
that's
of the
kind of a big
conversation.
deal too, to set
But
up
they're all
shop
happy,
as a
all my
test,
neighbors are
but-
happy with what they're
Okay.
doing.
Yes, good.
Extremely happy.
That's good, yeah.
Okay.
So just, to find out when that type of project, I think that would be moving to other streets and being notified as soon as possible of that, or.
And I agree with that,
Yeah.
but I would bring you back to one thing that I said, and this is very critical to me, in terms of my role with the city, is it's a public asset, right? So, and here's what I mean when I say that. Whether a street is concrete, we have concrete streets, I'm pretty sure a Bay Street is a concrete street, or whether a street is an asphalt street, there's sections of Bay Street that is concrete. We try to do as best we think for the city, or for the municipality as a whole, and it really comes down to the wear and tear and the types of vehicles. So yes, we can probably inform everyone, but most residents, I don't think a lot of people are going to be concerned whether or not it's concrete or whether it's asphalt. They may be concerned about the process, the inconveniences
I
of the
think
time.
that's the major.
That I can
And then
agree with.
obviously how the end result looks.
I can agree with that.
I'm behind on all this, I'm sorry.
You're
Is
fine.
the look of 49th right now, is that how that street's to look? The entire 49th with all the,
Patchwork?
Well,
Patchwork
they're,
is-
they're taking
That's part of what it's
the part that's there now and
Uh-huh.
smoothing it out.
Yeah,
And the
but if
part
you,
I'm
but if
walking
you
There's
go,
on-
so
if you go
many,
east, if you go east, it's flat gray concrete. It doesn't look like historical concrete, and then it
Wait,
slowly
it
gets
looks
in.
like
and
lots of different types of street
It's like, it was
products.
definitely an experiment, and it looks like an
It
experiment.
looks, I might not
I mean-
seeing
Okay, so
49th
how
right.
many-
Could you
Okay.
help me see that?
Some of this from the social media standpoint, where I've had to be involved with everyone's concerns. Comments. A lot of people are upset by what happened on the 1400 block, part of the 1300 block, because the people were hired to do a job, and they experimented to find this, and it took them most of 49th Street to figure this out.
But Gretchen, help me out, what is this?
The
They
look,
experiment
the
with
The
that.
look that
process.
looks good now.
Yeah, but, okay,
So there's one block where every patch is a different color and a different texture and a different
Yes.
look. And I think that one of the biggest complaints is that they went in there, they experimented, they should fix it. That's, I think, like, if that area didn't look like that, people wouldn't be pointing to this project as being a problem. Because that's the thing that everybody sees. They see the patchy and the weird textures and everything. Whereas when you go down the road, it does look good. They figured it out. I think so. I mean,
By
I
the
would
way,
like to
waters,
see
yeah,
it.
by the time they got the
Yeah,
waters.
they
I think
figured it
there's
out.
some sections that they figured it out, but from a that knows nothing about this kind of stuff, I think it looks like
It doesn't look good.
S-H-I-T.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
spell it out, cause I'm a
Yeah.
lady. S-H-I-T. No, I
Okay.
really do, though. I've never seen something as horrid, and it just seems like what the people went through, not a normal process of redoing a street. We get notified when there's runs going through the city. They should get notified of major construction and testing going on the streets, and I'm concerned that same type of process is just gonna continue on, and I'm not even convinced it is looking that you do have it down pat. I mean, I think the whole thing needs to be reassessed and redone in order for us that pay for our homes and we live in a certain type of environment to have that come in and done, because it's historic, all of a sudden, well, I don't know.
Well, and
I mean,
almost-
of course, maybe it needs to be done, I agree, but we should have that process figured out before you go and wreak havoc. It looks awful.
Well-
I'm sorry, that street got, in my eyes, very not looking its best.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the folks who live over there, because they're unhappy
Yeah,
about it,
but-
and they might not even come to the meetings, right, because they're unhappy.
Oh, of course.
And so they don't come, and they might not even get their voice heard.
Mm.
Maybe Gretchen hears it, but.
And I don't know, we're
There's a
just,
lot of
I don't
things
even
that
know what
happen.
other people think, we don't really have
Well,
these.
why don't we let Heath respond to
Yeah.
that?
Well, so what I was gonna say, Brooke, is this, I mean, what you're referring to is a valid point, right? But here's what I would say to that, if you put us all in a room, we're even in this room, I can guarantee if I said, what's for dinner, cause I'm hungry, we're all not gonna agree, right? So what the city had to do was determine the difference between, getting back to a historical road, because believe it or not, this is where I need Robin, because this is his specialty, that is a historical concrete road.
Right,
That's
just
the-
49th or all
No,
of them?
they're all over the city.
They're all over the city, but in our area.
Yes.
In
In fact,
Parkside.
probably,
So,
Yeah.
but granted,
So-
I'm Jeff, granted, that's true, right?
Okay.
But, just adding more concrete to it in my opinion, and I'm not a professional on this, but it detracts from the historical value of the road. You can't put down a concrete that's obviously a different texture, a different color, and say that you're restoring the integrity
And
of the historical.
experimenting with it, and then
But
maybe
you
now
had to
finally
though,
got it.
because the sections of
Is this the
concrete that
first
we
time
took
we've
out.
done it? Well, is this the first time we've
This
restored
is not the
it?
first time we've repaired a road.
Okay.
But
But
understand.
I think we're most concerned though about then taking this throughout the neighborhood, being
Okay.
notified when, and what this process really looks like, plus, the restoration of, I think, the damage that was done in the learning curve process.
Fair
Just a
enough.
thought, and I think, also, it doesn't have to be a but here, it could be, yeah, we should notify the residents, maybe that was another miss.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I don't think that needs to be an argument, like, we love to be notified of things, so.
can I say one
Let's
thing?
give
I'm fair with
Stuart a
that.
chance to
Yeah,
talk. He had his
sorry.
hand up
I'm
for
fair with
like
that.
10 minutes, so.
Here's for anyone that hadn't seen it today, here's pictures of the kind of ground concrete. This is that was washed off, and I took photos of it. I've been sort of involved with Richard, from very early on. I have an interest in concrete and preservation, and I think, all in all, I want to say to the city, I think y'all have done a remarkable job. Y'all learned a lot about historic concrete in this, and I think the 1400 block is a loss. It's a mistake, but 1300 block, it looks much better. 13 looks better, and 12 looks much better, and I think y'all, achieved your goals. I mean, part of the goal is to not have asphalt, which saves the city about $100,000 not to pave, to pave that much asphalt. So that's good for the city. It also reduces the heat, which we've talked about before, by about 10 degrees. And I think Chuck Watson had done a study that at your house, that there's 3 degrees difference in heat at your house. So that's a bonus from my point of view. I like the historic look. I think they did a very good job of working within the constraints of what they have, and I think Richard should receive praise for that. The 1400 block, I'd say, we should treat that as a separate thing, because that doesn't look great, and I think a little asphalt over there for that neighborhood wouldn't be a bad idea. But my question today is, so the mitigation for the ground lane that you were talking about, the mistake, where y'all took the grinder through about 6 months ago. The mitigation is to do this laser cutting. I think it looks great. I washed it off as soon as they were done near our house, and it's very smooth. It is unifying. I actually drove on it. Don't tell the police. I came over with 2 wheels on that, and it's very smooth. And I think it achieves its goals. Now I believe I was told that it's either we're going to do 1 lane, which the road sort of split into 3 lanes, or we're doing half of the road or the whole road. That's the big question for me.
So Richard, now, there was some conversation back and forth, so what are we doing?
The transition is a 7-foot mill, that's the problem area. And so we start from 0, we have to grind through it, and it's gonna wind up about 12 feet, which the road's 13.1. So it's about half the road.
I didn't understand any of that.
Okay.
Are you doing all of the road?
No,
again?
no ma'am, at this point, 1 lane.
So
We're just
that
doing the
your
1
lane
lane,
would be
the
half the
mill
road.
that actually went through there, actually is a 7-foot mill, which means he ground up 7 foot of the westbound lane. So in order to 7 feet wide. So in order to correct it, this laser grinder is gonna start at the edge of the curve, and we'll start from nothing, basically, meaning we'll grind nothing and work a 1/4 inch, whatever the perfect level is, and come across that 7-foot grade in that area, and then go back to nothing so that you have a constant flow across the road like it was originally designed.
So will it be from the crown?
It'll be 12 feet.
The crown of the
It's a
road.
38-inch cut, so we're looking right at 12 feet.
Right, so basically from the crown of the road over, so half
That's
of the road.
correct, half
Half
the
of the
road.
roadway. So the question there is, I like half the roadway better than a third, but, why not the whole roadway? And what are the costs?
Well, let me mention, we gotta go back to the history of this. And Brooke, this is very important. I don't think you were here when all this started. We started out to pave the road.
Yeah.
And some suggestions were made by some of the residents that, hey, there's concrete under there.
Right.
Could we restore the concrete instead?
Good idea.
And city staff, and this predates Heath,
Okay.
said.
And there was some desire on the department's side to save money, not to do the asphalt.
Not so much, not so much.
I was there.
It wasn't.
It was sort of a.
It
Because
really
some
was.
people thought-
It was a desire to try to
Yes.
work with the neighborhood,
Okay.
to try to do this, and we were
And it
warned
was
that.
your decision though to do it or not do it, right? It all kind
No,
of.
no, it was a very involved thing. We had a lot of discussions on this thing. And we looked at it, and the person who was in charge of it at the time said, you're not gonna like the way this thing looks, we're not
Okay.
gonna be able to match everything.
Okay.
And the decision was, you're not gonna be able to match the asphalt either. Let's see what it looks like. And we came up, and the first look was either white or pink, I forgot which. I think it was pink. It had a pink look to it, and they said, okay, well, that color doesn't work, let's come up with a different color, and then we talked about aggregate. I learned what aggregate was, that's the rocks that are in the.
I know aggregate.
I didn't know.
Amazing, yeah.
And so we started looking at that, and the question came up again at this meeting, do we wanna do that, or we just wanna pave the thing? And this neighborhood association went to a great deal of effort to advise everybody, we're
Right.
gonna meet out in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And we all did, and we all almost got killed because one of those speeders came flying through right in the middle of the meeting. And at that time, we decided that, okay, let's just go with asphalt, and then other members said,
Right.
let's go back and talk about the asphalt again. We understand it's gonna look
Yeah.
ugly,
Yeah.
but we're getting better at it.
Uh-huh.
And so the decision went back to, okay, let's try the asphalt.
You mean
Even though we
concrete.
know, I'm
The
not trying to
concrete, I
concrete.
can follow it, uh-huh.
In the meantime, in an attempt to try to hurry this thing up,
Uh-huh.
we brought in a different type of machine
Good.
that was supposed to chew up the pavement
Okay,
quicker.
and that did.
And we asked them to do a small patch, but we did not define what a small patch was.
Okay.
Well, they did 2
Some
blocks.
issues,
Yeah.
Yeah, that
right,
wasn't a
it
small
happens,
patch.
no.
So we ended up with this big chewed up
And
part.
can you fix that?
on the side.
Or that's the problem?
And that's what we're
That's
working
the
on
problem,
now.
yeah.
And that's what got us to this point.
And then, going forward though, have you nailed it, like you could hit up a street and do it, or no?
Could you do 50th Street next and not 48?
I'm just
Because I live on
kidding.
48.
But just like, or you're not sure
I said
if
at the
it's-
last meeting I was at, I'd have a hard time trying to do another one.
Right,
Yeah.
so it might not be another one. Okay,
It-
and
it-
then-
Yeah.
I'm getting calls and
And then-
emails
but- and you're
from
not
people
even
who
sure
didn't
if
like it at all.
No, okay.
And
Well, look,
people
I
who do
think
like it, I get it all.
The problem is though, is speaking as a small business owner, if I'm given a job and I do a bad job and I mess it up, I'm responsible for fixing
For
it.
sure.
And I was at these meetings, I heard you all talking about aggregate, trying to match things, and yet this contractor just kept doing the wrong thing.
And that happens sometimes,
contractor
sometimes
that
things
did
get
all that
screwed up, it's
original
about
stuff?
doing
They
fixing
were
it.
terrible.
And so
And that's
I
what
don't
we're fixing
understand
now.
why we're gonna have to be on the hook and have, Tina's block be stuck with this
Well,
patch.
it's a quilt.
And
is.
when it was
Well-
clearly their fault, they did not listen to y'all, so.
Yeah.
It's just gotta be redone, that's
But
just
what
the
they
right
didn't
thing.
do, it wasn't the color, that was the city that did that, it was when they roughed up the thing, and that's what they're
Well,
fixing
that's the
now.
problem, but, one thing that has
Have you
people
seen- have you
upset
seen that
is the
one?
patchwork
Yeah.
that's 14th
But the
Street.
patchwork wasn't what we're talking about, the patchwork they
Well, we
told us,
need
it's
to
like
have
you said,
this
you're a
as a
small
complete
business.
conversation.
When somebody hires you to do a website, I don't know what you do a website, and you say, well, you're not gonna like that blue background, it's gonna it's gonna conflict with this. And he said, no, I want the blue background, so he put the blue background there, and then you come back saying, no, don't like that blue
But if,
background.
Well, hold on a
and
second.
I, but it's
Yeah, hold on.
1100 block on 1400 block, there wouldn't be an issue. So because we brought in a learning child to do this project, we are now stuck with this learning process going all the way down the street. Now, I've seen Park is gorgeous with
Yeah,
the
but
concrete
Gretchen, I don't think
there.
it was a learning child. Now, I had a conversation with, I know Rob was there, when I stepped in, there was always this idea about how hard it was to match. And there was this idea about the aggregate. And I'm pretty sure that there was a correspondence where we went back and forth, and my initial response was that it is going to be very hard to get 100% match.
Okay, let me just make a comment about this though, okay? So, we don't make roads.
That's right.
We're residents, we do not make roads. Now, there's a couple people here who are experts. There was never said, never, and I stand by this 100%, that all of these patches will stay like this as they experiment along the road. That was never said. Now, they said it might not match exactly when it's all said and done.
Okay.
But nobody ever said, we are gonna have a patchwork road that's gonna look like this. That was never expressed to us, and I think that that's the key thing. It's not our responsibility to know that.
But you're
It's-
speaking 1400.
I'm talking about that block where it's all crazy.
It
And
is.
it was not clear that this was how it
13
would
and
stay.
14.
Right, one project, the entire street, lots of misses along the way.
Okay, so let me ask this. Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Was there an expectation that this was gonna be like a asphalt road? I guess I'm.
No, it
No,
was
no,
like,
the
there's a
expectation,
nice looking
the expectation, I think,
historic
was
road.
it gonna be restored to the historic, restored historic road, like you said.
Like park.
But I
and-
can't-
But
But I need to ask Robin this. I would've had to cut a patch out, because now, here's the other piece that I think we're overlooking, is that part of what we had to do was come in and repair the road. That's what the problem was. There was some historical concrete that had to be cut out and removed. Structural repair. All right, so if you'll give me that, then there is no way unless, and maybe, I wasn't there, but maybe we didn't explain it well, but if I cut out a section of historic concrete to patch it, I have to remove that section. Then there is going to be a look of patchwork. But that seems to be what there is no way.
we could do
Wait,
it.
can I
Okay.
interject?
Yeah.
Yeah, I live
Okay,
on
go.
49 on the 1100 block. And my degree is in archaeology. A lot of my neighbors have backgrounds in history and preservation and things like that. There are two ways to do preservation. One is to take the actual historic structure and use the right materials and redo it the way it is. The other is to do it, to just rip out everything but redo it in the way they would have done it. And so just rip out all the concrete and have re-poured uniformly. And I think on the 1100 block, they did half of the block like that. And we're all happy with how that turned out. But the other half of 1100 is a patchwork quilt, and it's different levels, and it's different patches and different colors even, and it's creating more cracks in the road. I mean, our worry is the integrity of the road at this point, which is concerning.
Heath, I think the fundamental issue on the 1400 block, and I don't want to be disagreeable, but you never do a mock-up that's going to stay forever. Usually you do a mock-up on a piece of wood or on a pallet, and you do your 5 or 6 colors, you find the one you want, you throw those away. So the fundamental problem on the 1400 block is that wasn't done, and in hindsight, I'm sure anybody would do that differently. Because that way, if patchwork wouldn't be there, it would be in the garbage somewhere.
Fair enough.
And, they'd be little patches, it's not a big waste. So that's just an issue, a learning issue, but it's left 1400 block with kind of a mess.
And
I think that was a good way to say it.
I can respect that, but I do hear there's other issues beyond the 1400 block. So, and that's the part, I agree with that. I came out here when we started to really have this conversation about really trying to match it, the aggregate, and really trying to match the concrete as much as we possibly could, and I agree with that, there is no doubt about that.
In the letter I sent earlier, I think my point of view is if you go ahead with the grinder, which isn't, from a preservation standpoint, it's not what you would normally want to do, but if you're going to try to make people a little bit happier in the neighborhood, I would grind the whole street from curb to curb. It'll even things out, it'll get rid of some of the black asphalt patches that are stuck everywhere. I think it would give a uniform look that, if you're looking at this point, stage of the game, to kind of make make the, and I think from my point of view as a preservationist, I think y'all done a wonderful job. I think it's, you saved the historic fabric that you want. You don't want to take the whole street out because of the expense. I think it'd be a much nicer looking road, but the expense would be horrific. So I think given the circumstances, y'all done a great job. 1400 block aside, I think that's its own thing. But if you were to grind the whole thing from curb to curb, which is an extra expense, but I would argue probably not as expensive as the overlay of asphalt, I think you'll end up with, some lemonade out of this lemon. And I think part of it's the goals of reducing the heat on, which is more of a neighborhood goal. I think the goal of saving some money and learning a new technique has been achieved. I think there's a lot of good come out of this. And I think when it's finished, pretty soon we'll all calm down and start forgetting about the road. But I had a neighbor come to me from next door. He's young, didn't know anything about it, but he's probably going to inherit his father's house. He's like, this is going to affect me for the next, the rest of my life, because I'm planning to stay here. And our kids have said they're going to stay here. I don't know if I believe them or not, but they say, I'm staying in this house. In fact, I think they're going to kick us out. But, it does. So if we're passionate about it, there's a reason. But I think you have a chance here to rectify some of the mistakes and really make a positive out of what is obviously felt as a negative.
And then would that help with the future cracks that we're not saying?
Well, I think afterwards, part of the end thing of this is caulking some of these cracks. Not all cracks are bad. It's the ones that are moving, so you want to, if you have a crack, you want to seal it so that water doesn't get in and make it worse.
But there are
that comes
definitely
after
some
the,
bigger ones that are still in the road.
especially on the.
Yeah, I think that was.
Just real quick, Tina's had her hand up for some time, so let's let her
So
make
I
a
live
comment.
on the 1400 block, and I see it as I walk out my front door, and I do see the cracks, and I don't know from good cracks from bad cracks, I see cracks. So to me, crack seems like a bad thing, but I'll take your word for it. What it looks like happened on the 1400 block, and I wasn't in the meetings, though I did get all the information. I looked at the social media, I got the emails, I went on Nextdoor, I got everything. So I got what I thought was the good information. So 1400, what it looks like to me, living here, is they ground part of it down or took part of it down, then said, hey, here's some issues that we need to fix, structural issues. So they cut out large chunks of those structural issues, took up the concrete, aggregate, sand, whatever the thing is, fixed the issues, then poured concrete without perhaps the amount of aggregate that could have been, because it's smooth, rough cracks, smooth, rough cracks, smooth. I mean, like, the whole street looks like it is not cohesive in any way, shape, or form. And what it looks like is perhaps they dug it up, fixed the patches, poured the concrete, waiting for perhaps a more uniform surface cover, i.e. asphalt or whatever, because 1400 was done way before the rest of the streets were done. So I don't know if they anticipated perhaps making it look more uniform, or saying, well, we just poured really smooth concrete next to rougher looking concrete. But that's the way they want it. That's not the way I think we anticipated it to be.
Out on the 1200 area where they went down the wrong ways, 2 lanes wide in the cutting machine, I walked on it barefoot. It's so different than anything else that we've all talked about in here. And it looks better. I don't know whether it can be any better than it is, but it looks better looking down that 2 lanes of the grinder.
So how much would it cost to do the grinder on the whole street?
Mary, I think the numbers I think it was about 50K.
So is that cost prohibitive? Is that why we're doing it on half of the street?
No, it's not cost prohibitive. If you will recall, part of my goal was to, because let me answer it this way. Had I not made the mistake that I made, that I admitted to, there was never a grinder that was part of this conversation. I made a mistake. And so the grinder came in as a method for me to fix the mistake that I made. And so I think the way I would answer that is, no, I never anticipated making a mistake, so I never anticipated having to grind the road. That's a function of just, I made a mistake.
Can I just make one more comment too, is that another thing that I know was never pointed out to us in this process was that when the old asphalt was taken off to leave the concrete behind, that it would leave asphalt chunks and pieces along the way. So it was never said, well, if we do this, it could be argued that, well, we might not be able to get the color just right, but nobody ever said to us, but there's also gonna be pieces of asphalt all the way down the road. And so one thing that the grinder does take care of really well is getting rid of that aspect of things. And that is pretty prevalent too, and I think that's another thing that adds to the sort of, it just doesn't look good. You know, there's like those bumpy kind of things. So, but I mean, Robin, I think, can speak on that and.
Well, and I agree with Stuart on many things, but in terms of the idea of milling the whole road, I beg to differ, partly because if the milling, I think an analogy would be, think of sanding a floor, and if you use only 40 or 60 grit sandpaper and did just straight lines and left a kind of corduroy effect, which this milling it's repairing really coarse milling damage with a very fine grained milling pattern, but it still looks like a very fine corduroy effect. And my fear is that, you know, part of this exercise was to preserve, you know, to restore as an experiment, a concrete road. The whole neighborhood, Ardsley, Chatham Crescent, all are underpinned by concrete roads. Only a couple are exposed. And, you know, by exposing it, it does leave residual asphalt, which I think Richard's been struggling to figure out what's the best method. Is it going back with the track hoe to scrape some of it off? It might come to pass that some of that has to be done either manually or, and I was just up in Wilmington, North Carolina, where they have an actual municipal policy for moving asphalt from streets. They're embarking on street restoration, mostly brick streets. But they do it in the winter when these things will delaminate better than right now. So I don't know if come winter, things will get any better in terms of, and I'll defer to Stuart on that one. But a lot of it, I'd say the vast majority, what creates a patchy appearance is actually staining and not actual asphalt. It's just an asphalt residue, which I've been mentioning all along, I think would come off pretty readily with a high pressure washer. And it's an aesthetic thing, as mentioned to Heath before the meeting, you know, whether that's part of the city's responsibility ultimately as part of this experiment to minimize the contrast, because where the historic pavement's left, it ranges from charcoal gray to a fainter tint of gray, but very little of the historic concrete is actually its native color. And maybe in time that will bleach out or disappear or wear off. And so I'm thinking if the milling went to the crown of the road and was faded out, as you were saying, and the south half of the road, which apart from the very west end will have to be milled because there's some damage there. If instead the different approach, which would leave the street intact, the historic concrete, without this corduroy, very fine grained corduroy, would be if the patchiness were taken off with getting, you know, cleaning it. If that were possible, it's certainly much more cheaper than milling. And I think Stuart, you were saying maybe a couple of days it could possibly be done.
I don't think it's, I think it's gonna leave a really unfinished look, but yeah, I mean, I think some of that black could come off, but I just don't, I think you're gonna have an odd looking street. But yes, I mean, I think some of that, the black would come off with pressure washer, no doubt.
So anyway.
We're talking about different things, though. Now, I need to point that out. One is you're talking about the remaining asphalt that's on there, that with the big black ugly marks
Right,
on the thing.
they need to be removed.
Which doesn't address at all the discoloration.
Concrete squares are all over the place.
Even if we go in there with the mill, we can smooth it out some, but you still won't have the discoloration, I think.
Yeah, because we still have some of the asphalt after the first milling pass that we've had with the grinder on the one side of the street. I mean, we have black asphalt that's still on there that hasn't come up on that first.
Even where today's milling was?
Yeah.
I saw some when I went and looked, it seemed like it had broken up.
It's
fairly
broken up a bit,
Okay.
but.
Yeah, there was an intersection, I can't remember the street, but it's
It'll
broken
flake
up,
off.
it'll flake
It'll
off,
flake
because
off
I could flick
eventually.
it with my foot.
And the other concern I have is, like, with this milling pass that we just had, there is, in some areas, almost like a 1-inch differential from the top of the street to this, where the new street is. So is that gonna be?
It's gonna blend in, that's the way
Okay.
depending where you live, it's probably on the first pass, so they got 4 passes, it'll go to 0, so there will be no ridge.
Okay, so that'll
whatsoever.
even out.
Right.
Well, we do actually have another guest here today who is kind enough to come from the farmer's market here to talk to us. So, how do we want to proceed here in sort of rounding this off?
Can I just follow up and ask, is in lieu of milling, at least as an experiment, if the city could, or somebody, commit to a pressure washer experiment, and since pressure washing is not going to undermine the concrete, unlike the grinding, and allow the neighborhood to look at it and say, and
Like the decision has to be made right away, because that milling machine can't sit here. I think it's, the milling machine is, when we talked about it before, it takes a lot of money to get it here, just to get it in place. That's a big,
Can y'all clarify something for me? Was it a fixed price contract to Savannah River Utilities?
per yard.
It was square yard, it was based on production and not based on time.
All of the changes that we've made, except maybe for the one mistake, that hasn't added to the cost, because this is a continual refrain. I keep hearing from people that they're concerned that it's costing $1 gazillion because it's taken so long.
Well, let me answer it like this, Mary. So if you look at construction costs, I would agree with you. If you look at whatever it costs asphalt for, whatever it costs us to do the concrete. But I think I would be very careful because there's a lot of staff time involved that we have not done any of that. This project has gone on for about 1.5 years. So yes, in terms of material cost, it has been cheaper. But in terms of how I could, again, my perspective is to manage the 700 miles. That is my challenge. So yes, in terms of cost, no, in terms of my ability to manage the other 700 miles. And I certainly understand I know 49th Street is near and dear to everyone in this room, including me. But I have 699.5 miles of other roads that this contractor could be working on for me. So it is a double-edged thing. So money saved, my ability to, right now, Alderman Miller, I hope he backs me up, will tell me that we're on a 70-year cycle. What that means is I only get the roads every 70 years. I need to do better than that. The only way to do better than that, beyond resources, is to move your contractors and get them to work quicker. So yes, we save money. Unfortunately, in order to do something like this, it takes time. That time takes away from my ability to deal with my other 699.5 miles. So that is your answer. Yes, we save dollars.
Okay, so, but it didn't cost more in what the city paid Savannah River Utilities.
Correct.
That was just a fixed price.
Yes.
I would also like to say that they were terrible. They had few people show up, they would leave for weeks at a time. You never knew when they were coming back.
Yeah.
I don't love seeing them get more contracts.
I understand, and I'll tell you, and that was an experience for me too, but I will say this, and this is not a defense. That is, you get more of that when you have long-term contracts where you're trying to tie up a contractor for 1.5 years. Stuart, he sounds like he's in construction. Generally, contractors want to work like this. They got a 3 to 6 months, they'll commit to that, especially smaller contractors. Larger contractors, they have more people. They typically don't try to be on a job for 16, 18 months just because of that. And so another lesson, there was many in this one for me, is that probably was not the best approach either. Being very candid, that asking a contractor of his size, Savannah River Utilities, to do a project that required 18 months while he is managing, he or she, they are managing other projects throughout the city because they have several contracts with the city. I don't know.
They're five or maybe.
So they have other 5 or 6 commitments that they already had, and then they made an 18-month commitment to this project, and they just ran out of resources, and that's a lesson learned for me.
Well, they ran out of resources on the 3rd day.
Yeah.
Because I was there when they started.
And they were spread too thin.
I've worked with them before, and
in 18 months, it just got worse.
Yeah.
You might have 10 show up one day, and that's a lesson.
Never
All right,
So we need to round
All right.
off here.
Can I just ask that?
Just
that
very
before-
quickly, 'cause we need to
before
round
move
off
on to
out of
any other
respect
streets,
for
I go,
Jeb here.
my heart is with 49th Street. But before we move on to any other streets and doing anything like this in any other street, can we have a solid plan? Because it sounds like there wasn't a plan. And it sounds like you were trying to figure it out as you went along. We would need something that is a solid plan to be presented to people here in this room before we do it. And an announcement made, and so we can actually have a plan, like this is what we're gonna do and this is the timetable. It's a simple thing.
I will agree.
You know,
I will
so.
agree with that, and I will say I think we can do that. Here's
Okay.
what I will push back just a little bit.
Mhm.
When we do that, because it is a public asset, we will have a challenge, and the alderman will help me through this, that we will never satisfy everyone. What we will have to do is make the best decision for the city, looking at our ability to manage that asset. And so that is a fair statement, if you will allow me to also say, if it is in the best interest of the city to restore the historic street and maintain the concrete, then as an organization, that's what we need to do, because we do have a significant challenge. with our
You know, even if that's presented, right? At least
Sure.
something we presented as a
Fair.
full plan.
So do you mean
So-
again
Okay,
then
we
to talk
have,
about?
out of respect for Jeb, we have to move on, because he's a
Yep,
guest
yep,
which
yep,
we
yep.
invited, and we need to give him his time, because it's only
Agreed.
fair. I just wanna ask one last thing from Heath, if you can just tell us what, based on what you've heard here, what is the plan after today?
More grinding?
I don't know, Rob, okay, so I can tell you what my plan was. My plan was, originally, again, to fix the mistake that I made. And as I currently hear the discussion, that is still my plan. I will commit to what I said I would do, and that is fix, I guess that's the westbound lane. And then I will have a conversation about pressure washing to see if we can manage some of this flow. And I will also commit to, we are gonna go back and fill those cracks. That was part of the original discussion. But beyond those three things, Rob, that's where I'm at today. I mean, I
So
will have
nothing's
some-
changing on the 1400 block. We can go ahead and tell the residents on the 1400 block that they should expect it to look patchy. And it's okay that we give email addresses for those people? Because I'm telling you, we're
Understand.
gonna hear it.
I'm sorry,
We're
that's
gonna
fine. That's
hear it.
good.
You know what I mean? So
Hey.
somebody needs to,
Understand.
so far, we've been trying to communicate to you
Fair.
what we've been getting.
Fair.
But if there's no change, we need to tell people that that's what it's gonna be.
Fair, and you can do that. You can do that. I mean, I don't,
It probably needs to come through me, feel free to fill mine out, mine's out there anyway. With your permission, then, I'm gonna let these two go, because they've been going
Yes.
since 7 o'clock this morning, and
And thank you, Heath, by the way, for,
No.
I mean, you've been really trying to help, and we
Yeah.
all see that.
No, thank you. This was something when I came in, I didn't know how it was gonna turn out, but I'll tell you this, regardless of the emails, the conversations, I appreciate all the feedback. One of the challenges that we have in trying to run a city is how to negotiate or navigate the feedback. And so I appreciate everybody and all the comments. No hard feelings, and when we see each other, because I will be back at 49th Street one day. Listen, don't speed up because you see me on the side of the road, right? So thank you, and we'll see you guys later. Have a good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Alderman, I'll call you.
I'm gonna say we need to put traffic calming on the back burner so we can let Jeb here talk about the farmer's market. because-
I'll stay late and talk about traffic.
Okay, all right, for anybody who wishes to do that. So Jeb, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's your plan?
All right, hi y'all. So my name's Jeb Bush. I'm the executive director of the Forsyth Farmers Market. And our organization, we really have two main programs: the Saturday morning Farmers Market in Forsyth Park, and then Farm Truck 912. Farm Truck 912 goes to 8 different locations throughout the city. 6 of those, well, 5 are solidly considered low income, low access. I actually had to count Daphne Park as low income, low access because of the far side neighborhood. But anyways, so we have a very strong focus on getting food to people who, you know, like I said, don't have access to fresh food. It's amazing how many people in Savannah, are estimated around 18 to 20%, live further than a half mile from Savannah and do not have access to transportation. And so not only are we trying to fix that problem by using remove physical barriers by using a farm truck, but financial barriers, we actually, for people who are on SNAP, give a 50% discount. And so, really, is a great program that's really meeting the needs of a lot of people. So, so one of our locations is Dappen Park on Tuesday afternoons, from 3:30. It's 3:30 to 6:30, and that will 3:30 to 6. In Dappen Park, and we are going to be doing an adjustment on the schedule. We're currently working on a new schedule that we're going to be releasing, I think the week of the fall, the first day of fall. And to kind of get some different things. It looks like we're probably going to be moving Dappen Park to more of a earlier in the daytime. We have to kind of adjust our schedule as we go into daylight savings time because we can't operate at night. And so, but anyways, I know there's a lot of questions about what more can we be doing. So one of the things some feedback that I have received from this neighborhood and Ardsley Park is that a lot of times the produce when you come on Tuesday evenings, is that we don't have a full stop, which is the truth. The stop before that is our Skidaway stop, which is far and away our best stop. So we keep trying to increase the volume of the produce purchased, and then we have an off week and we end up eating several $100s worth of food costs. So we're still trying to find that magic balance. So we'll be, if the new schedule does get approved, we'll be actually moving the Dappen Park to Mondays. Put y'all at the front of the schedule. And then I know just from peeking onto y'all's neighborhood Facebook page, there has been discussion of y'all wanting your own farmers market, which I think is great. There are a lot of barriers to that happening, administratively, etc. I mean, of course, you can do it yourselves, but it is in our long-term plans to open a second market. And what is that long-term? I cannot tell you at this point in time. But what I can tell you is, and this is speaking as a former farmer, is that, I was telling them this earlier, people used to come to me all the time, be like, hey, we're starting a farmer's market, come be a vendor. And I'd be like, good for you, absolutely not. And that's just because as a farmer, you only have a couple of days, I would generally do Thursday and Saturday markets. The rest of the time you're working on the field. It's hard to pull farmers, especially if they're already kind of established in some markets, into a new place. With that said, I feel like our organization has the best shot at opening a second market at some point in time in the future. But I think that second shot's going to have a lot to do with what are the sales on the farm truck, to be honest with you. That's going to be the best way for me to sell farmers coming to Dappen Park, is to say, this neighborhood loves fresh produce. And I can show you these numbers over and over and over again. So that's, like I said, those are long-term plans. But I know a lot of y'all do come out on Tuesday afternoons and evenings. I really appreciate y'all's support of the program. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir. You gotta be nicer to me than y'all were to Heath.
Okay. No suggestions of pressure washing. So, get that produce clean. So I don't know if you have a calendar of events at Dappen. Dappen gets all sorts of different kinds of events that attract people from around the city.
Yeah.
And it might be worth as a kind of experiment beyond the truck, inviting farmers on one of those event days when people are already congregating in Dappen. Say, hey, well, if you have enough to, it'd probably be on a Saturday though. So I don't know whether your vision would be having two markets on the same day.
No, the vision was to do like a midweek, like the Wednesday market here, like kind of a Wednesday afternoon.
May I ask a question? How many of you have been to the farm truck 912 thing? The farm truck. Okay, well, I'm just gonna tell you, if you haven't been there, it's awesome. It's inexpensive. You kind of have to like pick what is there, but Gretchen and I have gone there and like just picked up a bunch of vegetables and made dinner with what was there, and it was all really good. And it's right across the street. I was shocked at how inexpensive it was.
So all of the produce that is on the farm truck comes from the vendors at the Forsyth Farmers Market. We do a large order on Saturdays, put them in the cooler, and then we generally try to do like a restock on Tuesdays or Wednesdays to get us through the rest of the week. That's been our biggest challenge, to be honest with you, is finding some of our closer farmers just don't have the capacity to restock us, and so we're having to depend on farmers from further away, from our, the ones that are closer, they have their, I told you, farmers have that schedule in their mind, and, one of our vendors he'll sell to me on Thursday morning, but even if I come to his farm, he's not gonna give me anything on Wednesday. So it presents its own challenge. Yes, ma'am?
Where do you set up?
We set up right behind the tennis court,
Okay.
so right in the middle.
I don't know, this might be something that we could all brainstorm on, but I always forget about it. Is there like social media that I can
Oh my
sign
goodness,
up
that is a
for?
great question. So if you go to Facebook and then you write, is Forsyth Farm Truck 912 in Daffin Park. It is a closed group. You just ask to be invited. I'm the one that handles that. I always accept. There's just something weird with the groups that you have to. And what's cool about that is every time, and we do a post on every Tuesday morning before we come, and we actually list out, hey, we're going to be in Daffin Park from 3 to 6. This is what we have today.
I've also set up events on the Parkside page just for the Farm Truck 912. So that'll go up weekly. They're on hiatus right now, but I set that up just a couple weeks ago.
So we're just on hiatus this week and next week, and then we'll be back up and running.
What's interesting, that Farm Truck 912 at Daffin has 15 members. Farm Truck 912 at Skidaway has 178 members.
Right, and so, I mean, well, that is actually, like, I never could I've been trying to figure out, like, why this stock has not been what I thought it should be. When we went up to Skidaway Island, like, it was just boom, because one of our board members had started this Farm Truck 912 on Skidaway, and I never really thought too much about it, because she just kind of managed it for a while, and then I was like, you know what, and then I realized this Facebook analytics, but us just posting on our Facebook page, even if you're friends, even if you like the Forsyth Farmers Market, you might not necessarily see it. If you're in the group, you will see it. You'll get an alert. And so the folks that are in Skidaway, and so once I kind of figured out the analytics behind it, that's when we started this group just a few weeks ago.
It sounds like Gretchen could send out a Parkside-wide invite to join the group. Mike.
Oh, I can add everybody if you want.
No, but yes, whether you do it that way or however you want to do it, just connect it through
I will increase
Parkside.
your numbers.
Thank you.
You might regret it, but I will increase.
No, I'll never regret it. I mean, I really just feel like there are several things that I pictured about the stop, and it didn't happen in the way that I thought it would. And so I really just trying to like reach out to neighborhood groups like yours, and we've probably put flyers on your doors in the past as we're trying to get the word out. But that takes a lot of manpower and materials, and so.
May I make, just to throw
Oh,
an
of
idea,
course.
we were talking beforehand, there's that parking lot that's right next to, it's not the one that's right for the dog park, but it's like, it's next to the dog park on, it's essentially right there.
Yeah.
It's at the corner here. It's, at least for us, for me in the neighborhood, it's not walking across the big open field to get to it.
Well, I'm gonna turned my attention to Mr. Miller. And that was the spot that we're in is the spot that city leisure services told us that we had to be in. That is the food truck lane, and that is what they classify us as. And so that we are restricted by the city rules there. So
I gave you my
yes,
card, you got my email, send me an email and we can look into it.
All right.
Keep in mind, you're also pulling from the other side of Victory Drive.
Yes, sir.
And that's not my district, but I'm just
Yes, sir. No,
pointing that out to
I
you.
appreciate it. You saying that.
If there's an area you think would work better for you, I'll be glad to represent you to the city and say, hey, is there any reason why he can't park this truck here?
That's great. And something else we had talked about, and it really just kind of popped up today, was even trying to maybe moving the stop to this corner here, partnering with Salvation Army, and that way we'd be kind of right there. That I am totally in brainstorming mode on that, so please don't hold me to anything. This is something that kind of popped into my head today.
I might also recommend this church parking lot. We could talk to Pastor Merriman.
Yeah.
There's a lot of visibility here, and can you be on private property without the city?
Yeah, there is actually a nice little city ordinance that pretty much gives us permission to be on any street or any property. It was written 4 years ago before the farm truck launched. That kind of gives us a lot more leeway than a lot of different other things or businesses, etc. Just because Mayor Jackson thought and the city manager at the time were big proponents of the farm truck and what we could accomplish.
I think that there's some confusion between the farm truck and the food trucks.
Yes, sir.
But I think if you're on private property, the city's got nothing to say.
Oh, right, exactly, that's what I'm saying. So,
and I think it is advantageous for people to be able to pull up in their car, get out. Some people, particularly when it's 100 degrees outside, you know, they may not want to walk 2 blocks.
I tell you, we definitely have seen our numbers at all of our stops fall during the summertime heat and all. We've had so many most of our stops are late afternoon. We've had to cancel about half of our stops this summer just because of the weather.
But I'm willing to try to help.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, I appreciate that.
I'm a little bit biased, I'm just gonna throw this in there because I do the bookkeeping and I also see first dibs on all the produce that comes in. But there's, on a weekly basis, we go from anywhere from 3 to 8 different vendors that we purchase from. So, the variety, I mean, we have anywhere from 28 to 33 vendors at the market on a weekly basis, so it's definitely not the full gamut, but we do try to have a representation of what's in season, and also, you know, what pairs well, so breads from Sprout Mama or Perk Coffee.
And one of the cool things though about because we're small, we can be a little more flexible, is that let's say you love Perk Coffee, but you can't, Perk's not the best example, you love Reed's Honey, and, but you can't make it to the market on Saturdays. You just tell Mark, hey, can you make sure you have honey next week? And we'll get it for you. Same thing, you know, if there was, you know, I mean, you can get Perk Coffee at Whole Foods.
I think 10 pounds of peaches for, you know,
yeah.
pie.
And yeah, or if you're making, you know, if you need a lot of bread, like the week before Easter, poor Mark, our whole refrigerator was almost stocked in nothing but special orders because people had put in, you know, what they wanted for for holiday meals, etc. So, you know, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's not the farmer's market, talk to your farmer, learn how it's grown. But Mark's kind of a farming background himself. He'll tell you a lot. He'll tell you some cool recipes.
Super nice guy.
But then also he, you know, he'll work with you. You know, if you're looking to get something, he will. If it's at the Forsyth Farmers Market, he can source it for you.
Jeb, that's a great service for this community. I appreciate you doing that.
Oh, and you know what? It is a absolute labor of love. We are this farm truck. You know, it's great to be in neighborhoods. You know, allow us to get away in here and JEA. But, you know, what we can do in these lower income communities is just, really amazing, and the support that we're getting there, that people are really taking advantage of the fact that we have fresh produce.
And that's the current schedule, but like you said, the schedule's probably gonna shift in the fall.
All right, well, we are way overdue.
I'm
so-
sorry.
No,
Don't
no,
worry.
it's not you. Thank you so much, Deb. Really appreciate it. Yeah, that's, and anybody wants to bother Julie Miller about some traffic calming?
Well,
I think it's an important thing.